your host of Lovitz or Leavitz. Big round of applause for Mr. John Lovitz. Thank you. I want to thank everyone for coming to the John Lovitz Comedy Club and Vodcast Theater Universal City Walk. You in the audience, you're here. We're also live right now on Ustream, so everyone that's watching right now on Ustream, I want to thank you. And I think this is our first show that we've streamed live. By the way, if you want to see other interviews or shows, there's a show, FYI, with these two major leaguers, Robert Fick and Dimitri Young, and they have an exclusive interview with Lenny Dykstra. There's a one called Talking Marijuana, which is about the legalization of marijuana, and then John Lovitz Vodcast. I interview Gene Simmons, Gary Busey, and it's a lot of fun. It's on the John Lovitz Vodcast Network. But now, I'd like to introduce my special guest. You know her. She's one of the original cast members, one of the creators of Saturday Night Live. Ladies and gentlemen, Laraine Newman. The first thing I want to say is if it wasn't for Laraine, I wouldn't be here because we were both, she was in the Groundlings Theater, which we'll get into. She helped create that company. But I was in it, and she befriended me. And the first time I met her, I was understudying a show that Phil Hartman starred in called Chick Hazard Olympic Trials.
You were so great in that.
And it was part of the Olympic Arts Festival in 1984 when they had the Olympics. And I got to understudy a show.
An improvised murder mystery. Man, it was great.
Yeah, and Laraine came, and they go, John, they go, guess who's here? Laraine Newman's here with John Travolta, who's was the biggest movie star in the world, and she was doing the movie Perfect with him. Anyway, she came backstage and got mad at me, and because she said, how long have you been doing this show? And I go, this is my first night. She goes, no, but really, how long? I go, no, this is my first night. She goes, all right, will you stop already? And she goes, how long? I go, it's my first night. I'm understudying. She goes, you're kidding. Anyway, she befriended me.
Because I was mad at him for being that good.
Oh, is that it?
Yes.
He thought I was lying.
Yeah.
But anyway, she befriended me, and she recommended me to Lorne Michaels, and also Charles Grodin. I got a movie, and he recommended me. But without Charles Grodin and without Laraine, I wouldn't have a career. So
oh, yes.
I can't thank you enough.
I left my fairy godmother wand at home.
But for those of you who, if you don't know the Groundlings, you know, I think it was in the 50s, they had an improv group in Chicago, the Compass Players, and then it became Second City, and then people from there went to San Francisco and started an improv group, The Committee, right. And then a guy from there named Gary Austin came to Los Angeles and started a workshop named The Groundlings in '72, but you take it from there.
Well, it was an improv workshop, and the most improbable people you can imagine were in this company. It was Jack Sue, if anybody remembers him, from Barney Miller. But he was also on a show before that called Valentine's Day with Tony Franciosa. He was like his hip valet who was always putting him down, but in a really clever way. It was so funny. Pat Morita, anybody remember him?
Yeah,
yes.
From the
he was in the
Karate
company.
Kid and Happy Days.
Tim Matheson was in the company. And a lot of interesting people. Actually, Martin Starr's mother was in the company. And
who?
Martin Starr's mother, Jean Flieger.
Who's Martin Starr?
Martin Starr is one of the actors. He played, I can't remember his name. He was on Freaks and Geeks. What was his name?
Oh.
On the what was the character's name? I don't remember the character's name. Anyway, great performer. And it was just a workshop. We were in this little theater on Vermont called the Cellar Theater. And we moved several times, and we ended up at the Oxford Theater and voted on a name. There were two names up for proposal, the Working Class and the Groundlings. I voted on the Working Class. Everybody else voted for the Groundlings. And the rest is history.
And then you were, which it's it's one of the, now it's very well known, but it's one of the premier sketch comedy groups. And I actually think, at the time anyway, it's better than Second City. I was in Chicago in '93. I went to Second City, and they said, "You want to come up on stage, do some improv?" I said, "Sure." So they took suggestions from the audience, and then they had an intermission. And for 45 minutes, they said, "All right." They outlined all the sketches, and I'm thinking, well, that's not improv. That's the Groundlings. You'd go on stage and said, you're a clerk. You're here to buy a shoe. Lights out, and you go.
Oh,
you just,
God. It's really frightening. I go see shows now, and I could never, ever do the stuff that they do now. I really think that they've created a lot of new forms. But the shows they have are so innovative. Have you gone to see the black version?
The black version?
The black version.
Of
they do.
What?
They've written about it in Rolling Stone. This current issue of Rolling Stone has an article about it. It is an all-black cast. The audience selects an iconic movie, and they improvise the black version of that movie. Oh. And it is incredible. Key and Peele were in the original cast of that movie, of that improv show, and it's just unbelievable. They do.
Where's that? They do that now?
It's at the Groundlings. Yeah, it's a Groundlings.
Oh, it's
show.
at the Groundlings.
Yeah,
Oh,
it's a Groundlings show.
I haven't been there in a while.
They do another show called The Personals, where Brian Palermo he curates the show. He finds the most outlandish personal ads, and he reads each of them, and then an actor is selected to create a character based on the ad. And then they have to do an improv where they pair the characters. It is so difficult
But
when you
they do
watch
it
it.
immediately,
Immediately.
right?
It
They
is
don't go
so-
backstage and rehearse it.
No,
That's not
is
improv.
So, I mean, these people are so skilled.
That's what they did at Second City. I mean, Second City's great, but I heard they write sketches, and then new people will come in and they go, here's a sketch from 20 years ago. Listen to this and imitate it. And I said, don't you create your own characters? And they said, no.
Well,
and I go, well.
I've never seen Second City in Chicago, and I know that they have a lot of.
They have a lot of great
I
people.
Think, yeah, I don't know if your experience might have been a little unusual, because I can't believe.
Well, that's just what they told me. They listened to old tapes. You know what I don't get is you were in the Groundlings Theater, without naming names. When you got Saturday Night Live, I know there was a couple other people that were offered the job, and my question is, they turned it down, but you didn't. Why?
Why did they turn it down?
Well, why did you not turn it down? I think they turned it down because they were working. I understood, and it was a new show, and no one knew what it was. But you said yes.
The actors that turned it down were more experienced than I was, and they had done a lot of so-called summer replacement shows, and that's how it was presented. Although it did start in October, but it was a 13-week show with a 5-year option, and we thought that would never happen, but.
A 13-week show?
Yeah, it was 13 weeks.
Oh,
it was
that
just going to be 13 weeks. And so they just figured, it's going to be in New York. We don't want to go away. And one of the people had committed to build the new theater, and he just wanted to honor his commitment. So to his credit, that was one of his reasons.
I know. Yeah, he built the theater, and then the Groundlings kicked him out.
Oh, well,
that's a pleasant
just
story.
Moving right along. But I did it because it sounded like a show I would watch.
Well, how did Lorne Michaels describe it to you?
He presented it to me as a cross between Monty Python and 60 Minutes. I did not know what that meant, but I knew that it would be doing sketches and doing characters, which is what I loved. And what I was trained to do. We were all trained to do that.
But I read that is this true, you auditioned for a lot of theater companies in England?
Yes, I did. When I graduated high school, I knew I wasn't going to go to college. And I was kind of floundering for a while, and then I wrote to the Royal Academy and the London Academy and Bristol Old Vic. And I had to go to New York to audition for all these schools, and I did a selection. I had adapted a scene from the book Franny and Zoe, and I had also done a scene from Twelfth Night, Shakespeare, which was kind of ballsy when you think about it, doing that for Brits. But I was accepted into a group of 80 people out of 300 for all 3 schools. And then I had to go to London for the final audition. And, oh God, one of them was like a weekend in the city of Bristol. And one of the things I had to do was tell a joke. And that was just a nightmare because I endeavored to tell this joke that my friend Dory's mother told me, and she had been in vaudeville. So the joke was really racist. And at the time, I didn't really realize that. And I got it out of order. So, I mean, I just must have come off like the biggest jerk. I just, you know, it was like farting on stage. It was just abysmal.
How old were you, 17?
I was 19. And there are no excuses. And so I was just in London, rejected by all 3 schools, and just thought my life was over. And then my mother suggested, I had studied mime, actually, for 3 years before that, and improv. And so I went over to Paris and ended up studying mime with Marcel Marceau for 1.5 years.
Marcel Marceau. You studied mime?
Yes.
What did he say?
I
did he say anything?
Well, well, yes,
Did
he
he speak?
did. He did. He did. He spoke to me. I hate to say it, but he did.
Well, what was he like?
He was great. He was a great teacher. It was a very rigorous school. I mean, first of all, it was 5 stories up in an old opera house. So every day, walking 5 stories up in a circular staircase, fencing, acrobatics, ballet, and mime technique every day. And I was in the most incredible shape of my life. I gained weight for the first time in my life because I was a skinny kid my whole life. And I also lived on a street that was an open-air market. So, let me see.
It sounds very romantic.
It was. It was
Paris
great. It was great.
And how many times did you sleep with him?
Well, we mimed sleeping together.
And you didn't mime that?
I beg your pardon?
Well, how big was his
Mime.
imaginary mime dick? That big? So then you had to mime a vagina that big.
My space work was really good.
Can you do a wall? Can you make a wall?
This is one of the things he taught me, which was, it's not that easy to do, actually, but, and I think it was to do a snake or something, an animal of some kind. I don't know.
Were you trying to get into his company?
He had no company.
Oh, there wasn't?
There was no company.
Oh, it was just a school?
Yeah, it was a school for mimes. So practical.
And then he would send everybody out and say, good luck?
Yeah, actually.
Or did he say anything?
It was,
Did he
this was the. Good
That's
point.
how you know you passed? So what if you didn't pass? You?
He was a really nice guy, and a lot of these kids spent every dime they had just to get to Paris. And once they were there, they had no money, and he ended up supporting a lot of these kids. And eventually the school had to close because.
Oh. Did he speak English?
Yes, he did. He spoke English.
So then how long were you there in the mime class? You said 6 months?
A year.
Oh, a year.
1.5 years.
ADD.
But I tell you, it was only French and sign language were spoken in the classes because a lot of students were deaf.
They were deaf?
That is correct.
Well, maybe this is wrong, but it seems to me a deaf mime is cheating. Because they've been miming up to the point they entered that school. Right.
John, it's been over 30 years.
It's not like anyone deaf is going to hear this.
I've never
I don't
considered that, but I think you have a good point. But it's like doing stand-up without the need to talk.
No, I couldn't do mime. It's very hard. But so then you were there a year and a half, and then what? You just said, I'm going back to America, or you didn't want to stay in Paris? Or?
Well, the school had closed.
Oh, you were there when it closed?
Yeah, so I went back to LA, and a friend of mine wanted me to be his audition partner for the drama school at Cal Arts. So I was, and they offered me a spot at school.
Oh.
And
was Robert Fitzpatrick there?
I don't know who that is.
He was the chancellor of the school.
I don't know, but that's where I met Paul Rubens.
A.K.A. Pee Wee Herman. Is that how you got in the Groundlings through, or that's just a coincidence?
The Groundlings hadn't started at that point. It was not in existence at that point. That's how he got to the Groundlings, through knowing me. I recommended it to him.
Oh. And what were you studying at Cal Arts?
Well, I realized once I was at Cal Arts that I did not want to be an actress in the traditional sense. I didn't really, they were doing all sorts of emotional exercises, and I was just really uncomfortable with revealing aspects of myself that were really what it meant to be an actress. So I understood that this was not really for me. But they also had an improv show that they were doing, and that I did, and I did it with Paul.
Oh, well, that must have been cool.
Yeah.
Well,
whose hair was this long at the time.
What I want to know is, like, everyone knows the story about the first show of Saturday Night Live and everything, but what I'd like to know is when you got to New York, what was it like putting the show together and meeting everybody for the first time, and did you think it was going to work, or all that kind of stuff that nobody would know but you and the people that were there?
I was very myopic because, I was very young, and so I was very self-involved. The first friend I made was Gilda, and the show had not been fully cast at that point, so we watched a lot of auditions. It was in a rehearsal hall called NOLA, and you got into this industrial elevator that went down, and then into this hall, and we watched a lot of actors that I eventually was like, watching Law and Order was like, that person auditioned for, and countless people that I've eventually seen in all these shows that are shot in New York, they all auditioned for the original show.
Was there anyone that auditioned that you thought was is known today as just a great actor and they didn't get it?
No, but I know that it was between Jane Curtin and Mimi Kennedy. If anybody knows who Mimi Kennedy is, she's a character actress and she's really good. They were both like neck and neck, but it was clear that Jane was just
I remember
fantastic.
I was on the show, and my first year, Lauren came back, and I didn't know you were at NOLA. I remember they brought us to NOLA Studios, and they wanted us to do improvs, and we did them, but they weren't very good. And then, remember Dennis Miller and we did something, and then he got me in a headlock, and he knocked me off a chair, got me in a headlock. It was very funny.
Nice. We tried that
I
too.
wasn't hurt. It was funny. We were laughing, but it was just. I remember we went to that NOLA Studios.
Mm-hmm. We tried that too. Lauren got us together in his loft, actually, to do improvs, the cast. And we tried that a couple times. It didn't really work. We did do one improv, though, Jane and Danny and I, of an alien family. And I think that's eventually was the foundation for the Coneheads. We had the voice. I came up with the voice at that point, but it was nothing. I mean, it wasn't any of that.
You didn't have a cone head?
We did not have a cone head.
Can you do some of it?
Well, what? Oh, God. Why, Mebs, why? John. Oh, I feel like a dog, trained dog. Sit, stay.
What about your Valley Girl character? Did you do that well, obviously you must have done that in the Groundlings, right?
That's one of the things that got me cast on the show. But A lot of people loved that character before I did SNL, and I got an audition for Bob Hope doing that character, and I was brought into his dressing room.
Bob
and
Hope's dressing room?
Bob Hope's dressing room. He had he was holding onto one of his golf clubs, and he had a bunch of his buddies in the dressing room with him. And I did the monologue, and I swear to God, he looked at me like, that doesn't even belong in the same room as show business. He just did not get that character at all. And Joel Silver, who at the time was Aaron Russo's assistant, hired me to be in the Manhattan Transfer special. And I had my first day of rehearsal, did the character. At the end of the day, I said, Joel, what time should I be there tomorrow? And he was like, oh, God, you're fired, because they did not get that
I know
character.
Tim Hauser, he's one of the lead singers of Manhattan Transfer.
Yeah.
I'll give him a shit about that.
Oh, boy. So, but yeah, it was so nice that, and when Frank Zappa actually, when he did the show, he was fascinated by that character. He really wanted to do something with it, but we never really got around to it.
But then he did that song with
he
his
did it
daughter.
with his daughter, yeah.
Oh, and that's why he saw it first with you?
Yeah, I think he was just really fascinated. But he's from Cucamonga. So he grew up with that same kind of thing.
And then your favorite character was Lena Wertmuller?
Oh, well, it's one of the favorite ones, yeah. I mean, I have a lot that I really love doing, but that was one that was just, that I created while I was at the show. And it was just, so idiosyncratic, and I had no idea what she was like, but I loved her movie. Does anybody know who Lena Wertmuller was? Yeah, she was like an Italian filmmaker. She made all these really strange political, sexual movies with Giancarlo Giannini, and I think Madonna remade one of them, Swept Away,
Oh, yeah.
But they were really just out there, and she was such a character. I mean, she had these big glasses and the, cigarette holder with a cigarette, and I just tried to imagine what she might have sounded like, and, I just loved doing that character.
Well, what was it like for you when they finally were going to do the first show, and it went on air? What were you thinking? Gee, what were you thinking?
Well,
Like it's going to work, not or
George
what?
Carlin was the host, and we had a sketch that was cut that I thought was so funny, and I could not understand why, because there was so much left in the show that was just kind of not funny. We did Alexander the Great's high school reunion, and it was hysterical, and it was cut. And so I just, the format of the show, now when I watch those CDs, because I haven't gotten through the five-season set by a long shot. I haven't been able to watch them. But it was really apparent to me how long it took us to really find our format,
Yeah, everyone always says to me, they go, they'll say to me, like, oh, you were in the best cast, and I go, well, I don't know. They go, what do you think the best cast ever was? And I always say this. I go, to me, the best cast ever was the original cast, because you guys created the show, and everyone else is just following in their footsteps. I go, they invented the thing. And what was some of the stuff like you used to do, and then they said, no, that doesn't work. Let's not do that anymore. Was there stuff like that, or bits, or how did it evolve? And when did you realize when it became a phenomenon? Like what point in the show?
Well, that's hard to
season?
say. But I think about the 10th or 12th show, it had really solidified in terms of, host comes out, does an opening monologue, go to a sketch, go to a commercial parody, go to commercial, come back, another sketch, host introduces the musical guest, or, one of the cast member introduces a musical guest. We had the Muppets. And, that's really, how it went. And then I can't remember and an update, of course. But I think, over the years, the show has a personality, and it has a personality with its cast, and it has a personality with its writers. And so I think it's really hard to say who is the best cast. You know,
Yeah, I don't think there is a bet. I mean,
I don't think there is
I say
either.
it depends who's doing it.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I mean, the guys that to me you guys created the show. It's like,
Well,
hey, you can't top
I think
that.
the writers are really who created the show. I think it's really about the writer. The writer is the show, to me.
Really?
Well, you can't do anything without the writer.
What was a personal question for me? I got really close to Herb. Speaking of writer, Herb Sargent, who'd written on Herb Sargent was like written on the Steve Allen Show and a ton of shows, and he was like, what was he, 60 when?
I think so. Yeah, he was.
And
the,
everyone's young. But he was in charge of Weekend Update, and he became almost like a father to me. We were very close. He's really funny. But what was Herb like back then?
Well, he
Here's
was
an
just,
established writer from all these shows, and then all you new guys come on. What was he like?
Well, he was like the elder statesman, and he was very inscrutable. He hardly ever spoke, but his eyebrows said everything. You know, he always wore his glasses on the tip of his nose. He had this shock of white hair. Very good looking. He was dating Gloria Steinem, and he just exuded this kind of quality of steadiness that I think we all needed, you know?
Yeah, he was a great guy. I got to host I got to be on the Oscars once, presenting an award.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and I went over my joke, and I was like, on the Oscars, and I went part of it was I went, to be or not to be. Thank you. My Hamlet has now been seen by over 1 billion people. And I called Herb. I go, what do you think? And he said, say next year Macbeth.
That's great. That's great.
That was his sense of humor. He was hilarious. Well, so you're doing the show, and you became friends with Gilda, and who else? Dan. I mean, I know you're friends with everyone, but who became like your closest friends that you would hang out with? And
I really hung out with Gilda and Dan, Franken and Davis, who lived in my neighborhood. Tom Schiller. Ah, gosh.
did you ever think Al Franken would be a senator?
God, no. But,
It's unbelievable, isn't it?
yeah.
I mean, what an accomplishment. But if you know Al, you'd be like,
He's such a hothead. I just cannot imagine him in politics. I mean, he's smart enough. There's absolutely no doubt about that. He is absolutely such a bright guy. And I mean, he went to Harvard, so, you know, there's no, you know, doubt about that. But he's so passionate about his beliefs, and he gets so aggravated. He does not suffer fools gladly.
no, he has no
so,
tact.
God, you know, being in
He hired
in
me for
politics.
Saturday Night Live, Al and Tom. They saw me. Well, I had to audition for them after you recommended me, and then they, you know, and an agent and everyone else. But they brought me in to meet Lauren. But Al Franken, I can't imagine the Senate because I wrote a sketch where it was like called the Al Franken School of Etiquette, and it started off with going, "Hey." you know, I mean, God. I'll just tell you the story. Oprah Winfrey was hosting. This was my first year, and they said, so you go in, I imagine you do the same thing with the host, come in Lauren's office,
Monday.
and you don't sit around. Yeah, so the same here. Well, obviously, Lauren did the same thing. So Oprah Winfrey's hosting. This is like in 1985. And Al goes, anyway, we had an idea for a sketch for your Aunt Jemima.
Oh.
And my jaw dropped open, and I'm like, well, why don't you just say, you know, because you're, you know, fat, black lady. I mean, well, that's what was inferred, clearly. I couldn't believe he said it. And then everyone went around. She goes, no, I don't want to do that. And then 10 minutes later, Jim Downey was the head writer. He comes in. They go, Jim, do you have any ideas? He goes, oh, has anyone brought up the Aunt Jemima idea? And she goes, I don't want to do it.
Damn.
But they ended up doing a sketch where Denitra Vance, God rest her soul, the movie The Color Purple was out. So the cold opening was Denitra talking to, as Whoopi Goldberg's carrying The Color Purple, talking to Oprah. And Oprah goes, I don't want I don't want to do the Aunt Jemima sketch, She goes, what should I do? And I think Denisha goes, beat him. And then Lauren goes in, he goes, Oprah, I want to talk to you about the Aunt Jemima sketch. And he goes in, and you just hear this big fight. And the door opens,
great.
he's got a black eye.
That's fantastic.
And
We had a situation where I had been imploring them to have Christopher Lee host the show because I am a big horror nerd. And at the time, nobody knew who Christopher Lee was, but he, you know him now from Lord of the Rings, but he was
they didn't know who he was?
They just didn't see him as a host because, he wasn't he was a character actor, but he was from all these Hammer films playing Dracula. So the first thing he says when he comes to host the show is, I do not want to play Dracula. So, we were just at a loss, but he turned out to be a fantastic host. He was such a funny guy, great raconteur. And
Great voice, right?
Oh, yeah, great.
What about the famous story when Milton Berle hosted the show?
Oh, my God.
He was telling everyone how to do it, or what happened there?
He just was not a very nice guy. He just came from a background that made him very surprised at what we did or did not know. He was with Jane and Gilda and I, and he said, do a little two-step, a soft shoe, like tap dance. And we didn't know how to do that. He says, where's your talent? And we looked up to him. He's Uncle Milty, so it was really hard to have someone like that say that to you. So he was not beloved.
But was he ever, looking back on it, when he would say do certain things, was he, because he kind of invented, he was the first,
Yes,
he made
he did.
live television huge.
But
Was he right?
He would change stuff on air. And he is from live TV, and he should know that you really shouldn't do that. I think that's why Lauren does not broadcast that show.
But did he change stuff when he did it live on air? He would
I
just
don't
go?
know the answer to that, but I think that, in the context of his show, it might have been all right, but he didn't have other actors depending on cues. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
Our show was strategic in that way.
Did you have cue cards in the show then, too?
Oh, yeah. Didn't you?
What we did, but I remember my first show, Penny Marshall was hanging out the first 2 weeks of the show, and then she says, she befriended everybody. Oh, and she gave me a lunch box for the opening show. It said Night Rider, and in it was Maalox and aspirin. It was like your Saturday Night Live kit. And I didn't understand why she gave me all that stuff, and then I started doing the show, and I got it.
Yeah.
It was nerve-wracking, but after the first show, she called me up, and she goes, learn your lines. And I'm like, oh, can you tell I'm looking at the cards? Because I'd never used cue cards. It was my second, William, I don't know. It was the first real regular TV job I ever had. I had 5 shows on a sitcom once, and I didn't have a lot of experience on TV. And
Tommy
I thought
Flanagan
I could
on
look
The
at the
Tonight
cards.
Show.
Yeah, the liar characters on The Tonight Show. But I thought, well, that was straight to camera, so that was easy. But I thought on Saturday Night Live, you'd see a cue card, and I could look really quick, and nobody would notice. And of course, you just see my eyes going, darting like crazy. So she said, learn your lines. So I said, all right. I go, you can see my eyes moving? She's like, yes. I go, oh, I didn't think you could see that. And I would just spend hours, if it was a sketch, learning my lines, and it was really hard. But to camera, I would say it.
Well, what did you do when they cut lines and change stuff between dress?
Well, I would go, they have dress rehearsals. I'm just exactly the same. From 8 to 10, and then they'd pick the show. They'd be we'd have 14 sketches. They would cut 6, which is almost an hour show. And then we'd go in Lauren's office at 10:30, and you'd look on the board and see what was in or out. And then on the back of my script, I'd make if I had 5 scenes, I'd write the order of the scenes as it would the new order in the show, and then I would write notes on there. Mm-hmm. And also, I noticed, honestly, I was the only one writing down the notes. I don't know how the other people did it because I couldn't remember.
Right.
And
But I mean, what about internal cuts and the dialogue? How did you?
Well, I would write it, and then I would have to remember. I would write down the cuts or some of it, but I would look at the cards sometimes. But mostly, I'd write the notes, and then right before the sketch, I'd stare at the notes, and go okay, and then just go. And I mean, you had to make your short-term memory like really good.
That's
well, I didn't remember the
fantastic.
cuts, but I mean, you kind of had to.
Wow, I
don't
just
know if I
got
remember the
really good at
cuts.
reading the cue cards because I had this one bit that.
Well, sometimes I would look, but mostly I would learn the lines. But the cue cards, one time they held them up. I was doing Lewis, what's his name, Buckwiles, I don't know, from Wall Street. And I was saying all this stuff about Wall Street, and the cue card guy, he tilted the card, and I couldn't read it because the light was
Reflection,
glaring, and I
oh,
just
God.
started making up all this stuff. It was ridiculous. About Wall, I don't know what I said. Anyway, the market was bull, and there's a cow coming along shortly. And I don't know what I said. You want to hear a funny story, though, about Milton Berle? Maybe you
Totally.
don't know this. Alan Dwight Bell was an original writer on Saturday Night Live, and as you know, he wrote with Gilda a lot. So I said, so Milton Berle was known to have a huge cock. So I said, you didn't know that? Yeah, like it's famous. He was like, he would show everybody, and he would, like Forrest Tucker, was supposed to have a giant dick, and they had a contest, and they go, Milton, what are you going to do? He goes, I'll pull out enough to win. And, so I said to Alan, is it true? And he goes, yeah. I go, did you see it? He goes, yes. I go, what happened?
At the drop of a hat, he brought it
And
out.
Alan said he's in the Milton Berle's dressing room, and he's got a robe on, and Alan's giving him notes, and then all of a sudden he said, Milton Berle said, do you want to see it? And he's like, what? He goes, my cock, do you want to see it? And Alan said, all right, sure. And he goes, and he pulled it out. I go, was it big? And Alan goes, it was a salami. It was this thing on the table like this. And he goes, my jaw dropped open, and I'm just staring at it, like gawking. And right then he said, Gilda Radner came in and saw Milton Berle with his dick lying across the table, and Alan like,
God, she never told me that.
yeah. And he said she walked in, she went like, oh, I'll come back,
Oh, God.
Can you imagine?
Wow.
Or did you
gnarly.
have to imagine, Laraine?
Oh,
What
would
aren't you
have to.
telling us?
Nothing, I swear.
Did you sleep with Milton Berle or not?
Damn it, John. I told you there were certain questions I didn't want you to ask me.
Fine, we'll let it go.
No, I didn't get to see it.
Well, how did when the season ended? Were you? I heard that Lawrence said, "Well, we're going to end it after 5 years because there's no more." Or what was that like when you decided? They said that
Well,
it was
I
going to
think
keep going,
he
but
wanted to. He said, "I want to leave when we're still good." And it was aye, Captain. We knew that Jean Dumanian, who had been I think the talent coordinator, was going to go on and produce the show, and we didn't feel that it would be the same show, and that's why we all left when he left.
And did you ever think? Are you just shocked that it's still on the air 39
I'm
years later?
amazed, but it's great in the sense that I love watching sketch comedy, so I'm happy that it's there to watch. I mean, I enjoy watching it so much.
Who are some of the people over the years that you got a big kick out of
Oh,
on the
God.
show?
Well, I love Amy Poehler and Kristen Wiig and Tina Fey, Jan Hooks, Christine Ebersole. I know I'm going to forget people. I love Bobby Moynihan and Mike Myers. Bill Hader. Oh, God, Will Ferrell. God, there's so many. Fred Armisen. There's just...
You think it's amazing how they keep finding people that are completely unknown, and then they just get huge, and there's like talent. It's like an endless supply of talent.
I
But
know.
that show can go on forever.
Yeah, it could.
I asked someone some Twitter questions, if they want to ask me on Twitter, and they said, "What was it like you always hear, oh, Saturday Night Live, it's a boys' club, and the women, and they had a hard time getting sketches on."
I've always said that it is a meritocracy. Whatever is funny goes on the air. The women, from my perspective, were never shut out. We're never kept down. It just, whatever was working, whatever was getting laughs, is going to go on the show. That's it. I mean, it's a business. That's how it works.
Well, tell us, then you left the show. Now, you have a huge career. Tell us about, in animation. You're also, Lorraine's a great writer. By the way, what's your website, LaraineNewman.com?
Yes.
Yeah, and I looked at it, and it's like, it's a very creative website. You just look at it. Your website is fun. I haven't seen any website like that. I mean, it's very clear and plain, to get around, but it's also,
Well,
it's your personality. It's fun.
Yeah.
You have little pictures of all your characters, and you click on it and see it, and then besides that, you write for the Huffington Post, the food Table
yeah.
for One blog.
Oneforthetable.com, which is a food blog. It's people who don't write about food writing about food. And we have lots of great contributors, Alan Zweibel being one of them, but, screenwriters, Steve Zalian is one of them, and Ariana Huffington has contributed, and even John McCain gave us like a coleslaw recipe one time, and it's a really fun blog. You should write for it sometime. But I've also written for McSweeney's and
In-N-Out Burger,
I
your
see that
friend.
light.
That's what I'd be writing.
By the way, people, you should know that this club makes the best French fries I have ever had in my life. Has anybody ordered them? How great are they? They're really good. Really French. Yes, they are very French.
Well, can you do some of your, just for entertainment purposes, some of the character voices you do in animation? Like you did SpongeBob?
I have done SpongeBob. I am Grandma Plankton on SpongeBob. Let me see. What would she say? Oh, give me my medicine, damn it. Well, she wouldn't curse, but give me my medicine. I'll go to sleep now. And does anybody ever watch As Told by Ginger? I don't know if this is demographic, but I played the mother on that, Lois Foutley. And she was kind of from New Hampshire, and she would yell at a kid, Carl, Ginger, get in here. I want to take a bath, and bring me that Havarti cheese, will you? And, oh, gosh.
Did you always do voices, or growing up, just goofing off?
I think so, yeah.
That's how most people do it. Well, we're going to take some questions from the audience. Raise your hand if you want to ask. Are they ready to do that, Mark? Yeah. Raise your hand if you have any questions for Laraine. I said Gilda, sir. Ooh. Well, I'm thinking of all that. In the meantime, what was your favorite? Someone tweeted, what was your favorite character to play on Saturday Night Live?
Oh, God.
It's from Sam Myers.
I get that question so many times, and I can never really answer it. I liked a lot of the characters that I brought from the Groundlings, but I also liked creating new ones. There's some seat-of-your-pants characters that you come up with at the 12th hour. When Danny, I think one time Danny wasn't there to do the show. I think Danny and John left in the 4th year.
Yeah, they left the 4th season.
And so we had Bad Playhouse, and we needed, he did Leonard Pinth Garnell. So I had to play Lady Pinth Garnell, and I did not know what I was going to do. And that day I had seen Murder on the Orient Express. And I had seen Wendy Hiller play a dowager, and I decided that would be a marvelous voice for Lady Pinth Garnell. But I'm telling you, that came to me seconds before I had to go on. So
seconds before?
Seconds before,
oh my
so
God.
I love shit like that, so, I mean, it's hard to say. I love a lot of the characters that I've done.
Caitlin, she says, please just tell her I think she's so amazing and idolize her. And ask, what was it like to be one of the first women of SNL?
The first women? First 3? Well, Gilda used to say that at the end of our tenure there, we would have to split a watch 3 ways.
Here's an interesting question from MJ. Who would you rather make out with now? Chevy Chase, me, or a vacuum cleaner?
You, MJ.
Who?
MJ tweeted that, right?
Yes. MJ. Do you know him?
I do.
That's a friend of yours?
No, I have no idea who that is. Made you look.
stupid. These people, I go, it's 8 p.m. They go, when it's 8 p.m. in the West Coast, it's 6 p.m. in Oklahoma.
That's the tweet?
That doesn't even make sense. No, when it's 8 p.m. in the West Coast, it's 6 p.m. in Hawaii. Well, this is why the middle of the country is so bright. Do you have any questions from the audience you'd like to ask Laraine? Oh, yeah, go ahead, sorry.
How do you get in the character before you go into the show?
How do I get into character? Well, this is not acting. It's sketch work. So it doesn't have a lot of depth to it. That's what I like. No depth. So it doesn't really require any kind of getting into it. I mean, usually it just requires a costume or a wig.
But then you just pretend and go.
Oh, I
right?
pretend,
It's just more
yes.
fun.
It's so much fun. I love it.
Did you guys rehearse the sketches ever?
Oh, yeah. Well, camera blocking, you know.
Camera block. Yeah, but we would sometimes you'd camera block a sketch on a Thursday at 3 in the afternoon, and then you wouldn't do it again
Until dress
till
rehearsal.
Saturday at dress.
That's what's
and I
so
could never get
amazing.
anybody to rehearse with me.
Oh, I know. But that's what was so amazing to me, that everything is the same. I heard Andy Samberg on the radio getting interviewed, and he ran down the schedule, and it's exactly the same as it was when we
That
were
was why I
there.
was wondering, but when you were doing it, it was like I mean, imagine this a show now, if it has a 14 rating in prime time, it's huge. You guys had a 14 rating on a Saturday night at 11:30.
Eventually.
I mean, that thing was a phenom. That show.
Eventually, yeah. It was exciting. Well, I told you about the time that John Lennon said hi to me in the hall at 30 Rock.
No, tell us that. No, I didn't.
Oh, well, I'd come from being photographed by Francesco Scavullo, who was a very big fashion photographer in the 70s and 80s, I guess. And I was going to read through, and out of my peripheral vision, I could see these two people, and as they came into focus, I could see it was John and Yoko. And as they passed in front of me, John said, "Hi, Laraine." And I mean, it was like he knew my name, you know. And I couldn't talk. I had no saliva in my mouth. I was like, and I got into the elevator to go up to read through, and I wanted to scream, "John said hi to me in the hall," but I realized that that would sound really high school. So I didn't do it.
I had the same experience.
You did?
Well, it was Cher, but
That's cool.
no, but she was in her dressing room, and I went to say, she goes, "Hi, John." I go,
That's great.
"Hello."
That's
Yeah, I know,
good.
but it's shocking that they know who you are.
I know.
But the Beatles, nothing's bigger than that.
I know.
I got to meet a couple of them. It's amazing.
It's unbelievable.
Who has a question for Laraine? Where? Over there? Oh, he'll come go over there next. All right, go ahead.
I have a question for Laraine. Can you describe your experience of having worked on Invaders from Mars, please?
Oh, well, as I said, I'm a horror nerd, and I happen to have loved that movie. I also love Tobe Hooper, original Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I had worked with Timothy Bottoms before. I'm trying to think of what it was, though. Anyway, it was interesting. Louise Fletcher, James Karen Black. We worked in the house that was our home, was the same house that was used in Mr. Blanding's Dream House with Cary Grant. And it was exciting. Also, Dale Dye was the guy who coordinated the Marines, who, we used Marines in the movie, and he has now become an actor. He is ubiquitous in any movie that you see with like a military guy in it. And I also like seeing the special effects being done. It was a good experience.
Hey, I had a question pop in my head about SNL because you said, John Lennon said hi to me, and I realized you guys were all unknown, and then you started becoming like super famous, and then I remember after the first season, Chevy left to go on, and then what was that like when you came back and he wasn't there? Was that strange, or what went through your guys' minds? Like,
Well, I was worried. I mean, I really thought that, his personality emerged so strongly from Update, and I was really concerned. I thought it would jeopardize the popularity of the show. So, when I came back and he wasn't there, I just, it was hard to really, when you're on TV, you don't really have a perspective that there are millions of people watching you. You have the sense of the 300 people that are in the studio. That's it. You can't really have a kind of a big picture sense. So that was the extent of it.
God, I remember my very first sketch, and I remember thinking, oh my God, the whole 30 million people are watching this show. And I went, oh no, the West Coast is 3 hours later. Okay, that cuts out 10 million. And I didn't realize there's like 5 million people watching. I had no
Because of the time
concept.
slot?
I don't know what I just thought it was this like, giant thing, and I thought I'll do the first sketch, and then they'll say you're fired. And I mean, you don't know, but when I got to the show, Lauren was coming back. It was the 11th year of the show, and on the 9th, Studio 8H, it's on the 8th floor of Rockefeller Center. On the 9th floor is where the people come sit in the bleachers up above. They had a glass case, and in the case they had a life-size. They had Eddie Murphy's Gumby costume. So this is 1985, with a life mask of Eddie Murphy. And next to that, they had a mannequin with on it was John Belushi's Bee costume.
Oh my God.
And so you guys, you had a tough job because you're creating the show from scratch. When I got on, it was like, Lauren's back. Are you going to be the next, you guys? And I was just like, I can't do what they do. I'm like, what the hell am I going to do?
Well, that's a lot of weight to carry on your shoulders. I mean,
Well, that was the reality. Because of you guys succeeding and making the show a phenom and getting a chance to do movies and everything, then everyone after that, when they got on the show, the first thing any reporter asks you goes, so what else do you want to do? Do you want to do movies? Do you want to do plays? I go,
Oh, God.
And I go, I just got here.
yeah.
I go, I want to do this. I go, what about this?
Yeah.
But it's
Well, that's
constant.
a good attitude to have. Is just do this.
It was tough. I loved it, but there was a lot of times I said, get me the hell off this show. I mean,
I know.
it was so
very tough.
competitive. It was crazy.
Yeah.
What you had a question, didn't you? Oh, where's
When we watch SNL, it's very fun to watch people keep from bursting out laughing. Do you remember a specific occasion where you had to try really hard to not burst out laughing?
There was only one time that I had that problem, and it was with Rodney Dangerfield. We were doing a takeoff on the Woody Allen movie Manhattan called Manhasset, and I played the Mariel Hemingway role. And I'd heard this line in rehearsal. I'd already heard it, but the line was, I can't remember my character's name. It was like, Stacy, don't go to Manhasset. I tell you, it's rough. I bought a waterbed and there was a guy at the bottom of it, I'd already heard it, and I fucking lost it, and I just had to just look away. He was great. But that was the only time in the 5 years where I really had trouble, holding it back.
What's with the blue light? Is that time is up? Huh?
That's a good
Don't
time.
whisper the answer. I can't hear you. What?
Wrap it up.
Oh, wrap it
Okay.
up. All right. Does anyone else have any other questions for Laraine? You have any questions for me?
I do. I have one. Did you ever have a crush on anybody that you worked with, like on SNL? Any of your cast members, any of your guest hosts?
Well, I dated Danny. But
Oh, now you bring that up.
Yeah.
I was going to ask if you banged anybody, but I was trying to.
For how long?
Very briefly, but we're still very fond of each other. And Well, I mean, I've never really been starstruck by actors because I grew up here, and if you walk, whenever you Christmas shop, you see movie stars all the time. But musicians, so when David Bowie hosted the show, I was really starstruck. And, not a crush, but just like, oh my God, starstruck.
Well, I want to thank you for being on the show. I just want to end with one quick story, which you can tell was, do you remember the party you had at your house?
Oh, yeah.
This everyone goes like, what was it? Because I'm sure like you, I wonder, what was it like in the original Saturday Night Live? And Laraine invites me to this party, and every comedian is there, and Gilda Radner was there, and I'd never met her, and she was just, like, I liked her immediately, like immensely. She was just so nice and warm, and Bill Murray was there. And about an hour into the party, or hour and a half into the party, all of a sudden I look up, and Bill Murray has Gilda Radner over his shoulder.
It's Billy and Danny.
Oh, Billy and Danny, and running around your house.
Say your goodbyes now. She's a goner.
And she was laughing hysterically.
Yeah.
And it just felt like that's what it must have been like when you guys did it.
Yeah.
Well, Laraine, thank you for being here, and
Thank
thank
you,
you for
John.
creating Saturday Night Live with everyone else. It's a real treat. I'm John Lovitz. We'll be back with another episode of Lovitz or Leavitz on the John Lovitz Vodcast Network here at Universal City Walk. Goodbye, everybody. Goodbye.
Ladies and gentlemen, give it up one more time for Mr. John Lovitz and his very, very special guest, Miss Laraine Newman.